Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching us, our viewers all over the world, welcome to this special edition of the TV Bakwetu. Please, we're talking about one of the most important uh, innovation that has started in Zambia, which is the CDF, Constituency Development Fund. And the topic of our discussion today is how can we enhance the CDF delivery and also learn from it. With me is my colleague and a friend, Mr. Bimbe, who will be our guest today, and we'll be discussing this topic. Mr. Bimbe, good evening and welcome to this special edition of Bakwetu TV.
Good evening, Patrick, and good evening, all the viewers, wherever you are watching us. Yeah, it's good to have me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bimbe. And as I said, the topic of our discussion today is CDF. How can we enhance CDF delivery and also learn from it? Just some background or synopsis of this topic. Before we delve into the topic, let's refresh ourselves first as to what exactly CDF is. Now, there have been some journals, and this can be found at J- JTCR, which is which is the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection in 2019. This journal was written by Charit Musamba and others, and on this paper of 2019 entitled Understanding the Usage of Constituency Development Fund, CDF, in Zambia. The case of education, health, water, and sanitation projects define Constituency Development Fund, CDF, as the generic name for a policy tool that dedicates public money to benefit specific political subdivision through allocations and or specific decisions influenced by their representatives in the national parliament. They go on to assert that unlike large national development projects, CDF finance projects are essentially community based and driven with the major aim of bringing facilities and services closer to the people for purposes of improving their social economic living conditions, especially reducing poverty. Parliament, for the first time, approved the CDF in 1995. This was under MMD government when President Chiluba was the president. May his soul rest in peace. The aim was to finance micro community projects for poverty reduction. It was perceived as a strategic instrument to address the inefficiency and ineffectiveness of local government structures in delivering goods and services directly to the local community. But the question is, why are we discussing CDF this evening? We think that CDF is an innovation. With me, for me, I think CDF is a game changer. It's an innovative idea of trying to accelerate local development and also as a means of better distribution of resources and its management away from the center to the people that are the ultimate beneficiaries. With the coming of the new Dawn government, the value of CDF has increased from about 1.6 million to just about 28 million. And this money has now been dispersed to 156 constituencies in a timely manner, which is very important. Mr. Bimbe, welcome back to the program again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go into the questions, Mr. Bimbe. My first question is, how can CDF delivery be improved or, for the better word, enhanced?
Uh, Thank you very much, Patrick. That's a very good question. And I just want to say that we are kind of looking at the CDF as a delivery mechanism for resources away from the center to involve uh, the local population within the constituencies. Um, so, uh, in the previous government, uh, in the paper by Musamba, which you've mentioned, okay, there are pros and cons as well that they identified, but that was that time when they wrote the paper in 2019 regarding CDF. And some of them that they identified was, the criticism leveled against CDF mechanism as it being a quick fix of fiscal illusion for free money, resulting in the increase on long-term expenditure. So uh, these I could say they were there. Probably these issues are still there. And however, since the new government came in, I think from what I've gathered looking at scanning the web, one can see a lot of amazing projects and success stories. But of course, there were other challenges in terms of processes and procedures for accessing the funds. And I want to believe that this is being resolved. It's a very good way, really, as a distribution model. So we need to be able to understand, how it works, what doesn't work, so that we capture that learning of that CDF and be able to scale it maybe in the future to other things, which we will cover later on in the topic. So that's what I think CDF is to me. It's about the learning. It's about people sharing what they've learned so that we can know what is really working and what is not working. And also encourage peer learning among the stakeholders as well. That to me would probably enhance the delivery and reduce wastage, reduce probably complaints as we've seen.
Okay, so what you're saying is CDF is doing well, but we need to we need to we the delivery has to be improved, and the only way we can improve it is to learn lessons from it, to see who is doing well and who is not doing well, and to learn from people who are doing well. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean. So, for example, okay, just go ahead with what I'm in the next question. What we're looking at is so the key lessons for me is really the amount of stories of change that we have witnessed. Be it school infrastructure, furniture provision, bursaries, police posts, just to name a few. Now, if I take you back and just imagine uh, this procurement was supposed to be done from the center, say Ministry of Local Government or Ministry of Education, to provide desks. Can you imagine how many desks would have been provided by now, just within the short space of time? Even buildings, we've seen, buildings, school classroom blocks that were earmarked for development. It takes time. Why? Because somehow probably the center is inefficient and there's a lot of waste and not, maybe there could be corruption as well. So that's to me is one of the best way of delivering this. Although I'm not really clued up on this one, there seems to be, to me, no strategic way to gather and document such success stories. of course, including challenges. There seems to be a lack of cohesive monitoring, evaluation, and learning, both locally at the constituency levels as well as nationally, whose results are publicly available. Because I've looked around, you have to really search the literature, and most of this literature, luckily I found that document which we've alluded to, and most of the references actually coming out of the country. There isn't a lot from Zambia in regards to CDF, although Zipper has done some work on written a bit on CDF as well. So we need more of that kind of thing. So as I said earlier, there seems to be also a lack of mechanism for peer learning and knowledge sharing among the stakeholders involved across the constituency. So you can see from just analyzing the web, there are constituencies that look like they are doing well with CDF. There are some that are still having challenges. Would it be a good idea for these, providers of that CDF to kind of share notes and learn from each other, so that certain pitfalls are avoided? We take the best of what is being done properly and then tweak those that are not going well. So that learning, peer learning, is really important. So we need to have, this kind of providing these guidelines, generic guidelines or templates, that can easily be adapted. That will help also, unlock the rigidities within the processes and procedures of CDF provision, as we have already alluded to, in terms of there've been a lot of complaints on people finding it very, very difficult or challenging to just apply for CDF. Something that has been noted, I believe, by the local government, and I'm sure they are dealing with that. But so if we have that learning, we can, going forward, probably reduce those kind of problems.
Yeah, Mukalebai, welcome to the program.
Hello, good evening, Chunglo Pomkwai.
Good evening, Mukalebai. Nice to see you.
Good evening. Good to see you. Nice to see you.
Okay, we'll give you an opportunity to answer, to ask the questions. Yeah, in the meantime, if you can please mute yourself. Mr. Bimbe, that was excellent. But then in essence, what you're saying is CDF removes inefficiency and ineffectiveness, and also it removes the red tape or bureaucracy or the middleman. And as a result, resources are allocated to the people efficiently and effectively. Is that what you mean?
Probably yes, but I'll go further. Is you see, when this development, when CDF was created, as we've learned from what you read earlier from the paper, was about to take development nearer to the people. But what this also gives you is the ability for the local people to decide what priorities they need to spend the money on. And because it's local, they also can monitor what's really going on. So if you take that to the center, for example, say we need to procure desks for ABCD schools in these provinces, what would have happened? It would have gone to tender, then you had, of course, tenderpreneurs would have come in, and what would have happened? Some would have gone to Botswana or to South Africa to bring those desks. It could have taken so long and at a higher cost. But what has happened with CDF within a short period, it has transformed that capabilities. People were able to make desks, develop the skills, put up production lines, and very quickly things were done. So look at the bursaries as well, the way the allocations in other places, if it was again done centrally, probably a lot of people in the rural areas, a lot of children or youth in the rural areas wouldn't have access to that because they don't have connections and all that kind of thing. So taking it to the people, I think, is good. It gives them ownership of the problems as well as the solutions that they're coming. It's not a panacea to, a silver bullet, but at least it's a start to think local, which I would think about. I'll say later. So, if again development is done in the local, you could solve another one of the perennial problem of urbanization. So if this CDF could be enhanced and work well to develop those rural constituencies. And I would also want to add, probably the funding formula should be relooked at, and so that the amounts are tilted to certain areas. I don't know what criteria you can use for how much certain constituents would get. So that way, you're improving the local situation. That may, reduce that pull to the urban areas.
So, Mr. Bimbe, I can see you've gone further now. I think you're borrowing some of the strategy from what the UK does. The UK has moved, not only the UK, a number of African countries, including South Africa, they've moved from equality to equity. So what you are talking about is equity. So what you are saying is the demand for money in the rural areas, say Shuangandu, is different from the demand in Lusaka. So what you are saying is there should be more money given to Shuangandu constituency more than what it could be given to Lusaka Central, because Lusaka Central has got a lot. Because if you give the same amount of money, what you are talking about is equality, but what you're trying to emphasize now is what is known as equity. Is that where you're going to now?
Exactly. That's what I mean, because there are really rural constituencies and others that really require to accelerate that local development compared to other areas. One would argue, well, you look at the number of people, but if you are going to try to help push development to the local areas, who knows, maybe some of those urban people that are not doing anything could be encouraged also to move back. You see, we've had this kind of thing of decongesting the urban areas in the UNIP era, where I'd go back to the land. Of course, it was an agri-revolution, but it wasn't never backed up by a really strong program around it. It was more rhetorical in the sense. So it didn't work very well. So what you are seeing is people flocking to urban areas because there's no activities happening in those areas. So I believe CDF and other mechanism, handled properly, could actually spur that development and discourage or remove that pull factor to the urban areas.
That was fantastic, Mukelebai. We talked about, we had two questions. We talked about two questions here. We discussed two questions. How can CDF delivery be improved, or for a better word, enhanced? And the other question Mr. Bimbe has answered, which I never actually asked, but he answered it because I asked it indirectly. What lessons can we learn from that? So, if you got any question, any comment on that so far, Mukelebai, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chilufya and Bimbe. My take on this issue over CDF, I think this is a new, especially when it comes to the amount given so far. I think it's quite new, and with our background of not able to look after our own resources, we failed to look after our 1.6 that we were given. And now, and without having formed a proper framework, a proper system that works, and we just went ahead and increased the CDF. Now the challenges comes, and the demand, of course, becomes more than we had expected. So if the government, I know that this is more like a trial and error thing. They are trying to put up new system, and really we can tell that from the time they started, the 16 months ago, this program is really, it has really hit some of the turbulences. It is not 100% clear. There's too much bureaucratic. It's very bureaucratic. People, an average Zambian, an average person in the village setup does not understand how to access this CDF because they have put certain measures that are quite unexplainable or complicated to an average, an ordinary Zambian. So it is imperative that this government should make it easy for people to access CDF. CDF, it's a very welcome developmental idea in terms of centralization because only those constituencies that are in urban areas are the ones that were benefiting from the previous CDFs with the government intervention, of course, the central government intervention. But this time around, they have made it uniform that every constituency, whether big or small, they will get an equal amount. For me, that's the starter. But as time goes on in the future, due to the demand of the developmental projects that may be required, I believe the new government is going to adjust and make the CDF accessible and be transparent to every for the Zambian people to know and see for themselves and accountable. We need this government to be also accountable for this amount, these monies they send to these constituencies. We want to see results also, like we can tell from our one able MP that is very result oriented, one Honorable Sande Chanda from the opposition, that he is doing something very positive. All I wish that all the other constituencies could emulate instead of showering us with complaints and negative statements issued over CDF. We know it comes with challenges, but definitely there's a very, very light at the end of the tunnel. We can tell that something positive is really going to come out of this CDF, especially the increment. For now, that's the only contribution I could give. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Mukeleva. You've talked about how we can improve the delivery or enhance it, and the most important thing is you mentioned one MP who is doing very well, and this is one of the reasons why we are discussing this. If there was a way of measuring and writing down and taking notes why that member of parliament is doing well, and then replicate it, and other constituencies learn from it. That's one of the reasons why we're discussing this matter, Mr. Bimbe. Um, so how can we capture and reuse that learning? The learning Mukeleva has said it. Somebody in Kachivia appears to be doing very well in CDF. How can we capture that and others learn from it? Because I believe, Mr. Bimbe, CDF wasn't properly managed. It was misused in the past. this government has put a mechanism which is going to work very well. Managed before, CDF was managed by the MPs themselves, and the money was squandered, or at the constituency level. But now it's managed by the council. But the point, Mr. Bimbe, I'm trying to drive home here is, now, how can we now capture? Because I believe going forward, the last 6 months or 2 years, we can use that data, because going forward, for government to make policies, they should be based on empirical data, or data that has been collected or captured, and use that data for future learning and for future policy formulation and implementation. How can that be captured and reuse it, and reuse that learning for the future? Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Thank you. It's a loaded one. So I mean, thank you so much, Bonkelevai, for bringing that out. It has to be also noted that though CDF used to be 1.6 million, disbursement was a bit not timely, I believe, during the previous government, and also, well, there could be an element of mismanagement and whatever it comes to. But what we know now is that even in that time there wasn't any kind of learning coming out of it that is much more formalized, structured to really understand what's really going on. As one of the criticism was in Samba's paper is actually alludes to some of those issues probably. So in my thinking is, if this CDF as a delivery model for taking development to rural area or to other areas, to local people, I think, I would probably suggest the creation of some sort of a center or something, maybe a CDF Center of Excellence. So this center could be, could have that convening power, bring people, bring experts together, discuss these things. It could, be undertaking research and collecting data to just understand what works, what doesn't work, so that we formalize, we create this knowledge that everyone could use for the future. Who knows, CDF as the delivery mechanism could be expanded to other areas. So if we can learn those lessons, that's better. So I would want to think also this center could be the custodian of data, keep KPI, or by collecting that data, which can be then publicly available, so that folks like you and me could go there and do a like comparison, how they're doing it, how many they've given, how many women access that, how many widows, those kind of metrics would be really, really good. The center could also just be a place where they could provide even, a digital platform to manage these different CDF, where applications could be, have like a single place where application could be pushed through electronically. However, they are, shielded from each other, but at least you have a shared back office for CDF management, which could be much cheaper to run, and also to reduce some of the overheads that they have. At the same time, you have a uniform way of doing things. Of course, they would be different in the actual projects that are being implemented. So they could probably, provide those digital tools, and maybe working with Smart Zambia and other allied ministries, they could come up with those ideas that is within that center. I also think that center could well sit in a research institute, maybe a university. We've seen ZIPA, JCTR have been researching on CDF. Maybe they could take up that role. Although I would would love to say, they put up a bid for these institutions to kind of apply to host that center. Then the other thing is then, how should it be structured? I would think the center should be, not top heavy in staff, but just have a small number of staff. However, most of the work could be funded out. So it can become like awarding body, awards. So whatever they want to research on, they can put up a bid, researchers bid for that, do the work, bring the data, it's put across, bring, they do a peer learning, they bring up people together, they teach them, they share ideas, and the knowledge that comes from it is again shared in the public domain, just like that. So you create that value in everything that you are doing. Because what we are very bad at doing, for example, ourselves, is this kind of capturing of that data, that knowledge, and formalizing it, and putting it in some form that can be consumed by other people. I think we are not very, very good. So I think with CDF, probably that could happen. Then the question is, how could it be funded? In terms of funding, because you want really accountability and ownership of this place. So could it be the case that constituencies, out of their allocation, maybe they can apportion a 5-10% towards running of that center? Because that way, rather than the money coming from a different budget, a different pot, then that linking between the actual people you are working for is removed. So if constituencies have a say on how that center is run, how it's constituted, who is the governing board, because it's their money that is going into it to improve what they are doing, I think there'll be more accountability and that sense of ownership for whatever comes out of that center. So that's kind of my thoughts on how we can formalize that kind of learning in a way.
I think that's very powerful, Mr. Bimbe, and it's a very good idea because, as you said, us Zambians, we're not very good at capturing data. We're not very good at at research. That's why not we don't not so many researchers are funded in Zambia. So if we can do that on CDF, honestly, Mr. Bimbe, CDF to me is really a game changer. Don't you think? The lessons learned from CDF can be a blueprint for wider decentralization, e.g., schools, hospitals. Because now we will be using empirical data, we will be using research if that happens, and those lessons can be replicated to other government departments, meaning the government now running away from centralization into decentralization. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. When we think through, when I look at this, as you've said, we think through it. We can pick out some of the models that we could actually pick out and be able to replicate to other areas. So one that comes to mind is, for example, Youth Empowerment Fund, which is actually managed through Ministry of Youth and Youth and Sport. So that is again centrally done. So you can imagine during the last government, they had a meeting of youth to come and discuss that same thing. And there were complaints from youth from other places like, Northern Province, Machinga, others, who couldn't manage to go there and meet the minister and discuss. Now, couldn't it be a good idea also if we understand these mechanisms that will make CDF delivery that delivering mode of that development to the rural or to the local people, then I'm probably thinking that even that youth empowerment could be done that way, via a similar mechanism, to deliver to the rural. Because I feel probably even that youth empowerment, if we look maybe, if we look at the data of the people that are benefiting of the beneficiaries of that, most of them could be just from the urban areas, probably. I don't think, someone from, say, Mpulungu, Kacholola would have, got that. So that to me is probably using that mechanism could work. Again, we are devolving, moving away from the center. We could also maybe ring fence certain funds within the CEEC to be delivered in that manner as well, through the local systems rather than from the central system. So there are a lot of things. I mean, what you said is education. It could, be another way, although it might be backdoor to kind of decentralization. So I can imagine a place, a world where in Zambia at one time, you find schools, say in the education sector, certain provinces or areas, setting their own pay scale, setting their own conditions of service, that could actually create that market, a competitive marketplace for teachers in terms of where they can work, because maybe a school in Kalumbila, for example, could offer better salaries for maths teachers because that's what they are lacking. So you find the good teachers could run there, but also the bad one, or those less skilled, they could be encouraged to skill because there's that local market, and like probably the way. So those are kind of, it might not happen now in my lifetime, probably, but I want to think that could be the direction of travel as we devolve most of this functionality, most of this resource allocation and management of those resources to the local population, because they know what they need. They know their priority areas, so they can decide which areas are much more got priority. So as we've seen with the current CDF, the way it's been, it's coming out. It's only just when did they increase it? It's now a year, 6 months, probably. So this is going to happen year in, year out. But so far, the results that we've seen in a lot of places, a lot of areas, is quite encouraging, so to say.
Okay, that's fantastic. Bob Mkelevai, any comments, questions?
On the research aspect, I'm so intrigued. I'm really happy with that point, that we shouldn't just be rushing into some undertaking where we don't have a backup plan, or we don't have data supporting the program that we are implementing. And we would love to hear the universities of Zambia or the CBU coming up with a research and well-funded research, so that they look into the area of decentralization, the benefits and the challenges. And because right now, all we see is that the politicians are taking over. We need to depoliticize this CDF. Politicians are taking over. They're using it as a whip to whip either the opponents. But here is the MP that I mentioned earlier, who decided to utilize that whip and turn it into a positive that benefit his constituents. So I believe if we can try to depoliticize this CDF, I know that it should be an obligation of the government and the local government, of course, to provide these social needs, these people, the things that the development, in short, in our communities. So instead of politicizing this issue, we should work together as a team, as one country, both the opposition or non-partisan or partisan. We work together to bring some kind of sanity and transparency in how to distribute this wealth. This is the cake that we have been crying for. Politicians, starting from Chiluba, I think we know what used to happen. Quality at presidential at slash fund, that one individual would be distributing this amount of money to every, so making themselves look bigger and being worshipped, you know. But in this, as we grow, this was enacted, and we now have it as a obligation, as a legal obligation, that the government has to distribute money equitably, and they have to share with all the provinces or the constituencies. They have to get an equal share of this cake, national cake. So how do we do it if we don't have the proper framework? We are right now. That's why mule monati na kulituma issues uturaisa utwingi. Abantu, they are complaining on how to access this. So if they can just open, I know it's a learning process. Naboba New Dawn government, they are also learning, and we can tell that as we are moving forward, they will find a very workable solution. But it should not just be the government or the local authority to find the solution for our people. We, the people, should tell the Zambian, the government or the local authorities, tell them to what we feel works for us. After all, it's us, the people on the ground, that knows what we want, that can identify the projects that we want, not forcing us ukushite myotoka when we can walk, forcing people ukushita to build certain buildings that are not the issue, the pressing issues that people need. So let the people participate so we can find a workable solution. And I believe through our research, through our mistakes, panga lelo, we are learning something. Mkwai.
Yeah, that was good, Mukelebai.
Just to add on, add on. So yeah, so the way to look at it is also, I mean, CDF was created, the way it was created is a long time. I mean, there are stories where it started from, where the originators, I think India is mentioned as a place where such a mechanism started. But if we look at what has happened with the current CDF provision, it's been, to me, it looks like it's a big experiment without a prototype, which is a very good thing, because what is going to come out is different ways of doing things, right? So each constituency is just being given this money. They've got to figure out how to work through that, how to manage it, and how to do it. It's then that big, 156 constituencies. That's quite a lot of learning to gather and to be able to understand really quickly what works, what doesn't work, because so much that usually such programs you might start with one as a pilot, learn, and then scale. But this was different. The other thing that I get probably annoyed with sometimes is the way CDF usually is being discussed. We tend to discuss it more, on the upstream beneficiaries rather than the downstream beneficiaries. So what I mean is, we need to be looking at the people that are actually impacted by what CDF brings to them. So these are the actual people's children going to school, parents having an ablution block, those kind of things. That's what we need to be looking at. Rather, what we see is the problem of looking at it from the upstream beneficiary. These are the suppliers.
So, Mr. Bimbe, if I may cut you, just hold that thought. So what you are saying is CDF should be specifically a macro strategy. It should to be at the macro level, not micro. Is that what you mean?
What I mean is, we've heard stories of you want CDF, just form a cooperative, right? And then you're gonna access the money. But within that, if they defined what problems they've identified that people really have pain points on, so that we create solutions or products or services to solve that problem. If we do that, then we can come back and say, you know what, we can form a cooperative to go and solve that particular problem, rather than create a cooperative, then look for something to do. I think that's where the wastage comes in, and I believe that's where most of the complaints were coming in. So if we tilt it in the way we look at it, it can be quite powerful. Then you end up having quality applications because they are really looking at the problems that the people are facing, rather than the problem of people not having money, so that they get money through CDF. So it's a kind of a different way of thinking, right?
Mm. Yeah. Like what you're saying, Bimbe, for example, namona e situation tukwete no Mbamulusaka of floods. Let's say the people within the local, the locations where they're affected, then we see this group of engineers that comes together and form a cooperative to mitigate that actual problem which identify water problem, how to, and it will be wrong for the government, for the local authorities, for the CDF, whatever you call them, those who are approving, to deny such kind of a good initiative like you are putting. So they have to identify a situation, a problem, and then they form a committee, whatever they call it, cooperatives, and then go for that specific problem with their project proposal on how to fix that. I believe that could work. And like what you said, Fiamma, what you said, like you just form CDF, I mean cooperative, without anything. You don't know what you're forming the cooperative for, or your target, or you are interested in Lupia. You just want money so that you can either start something from the blues. So I don't know, Limbimuma project, Yabumuma cooperative, Yabalabika, what the intentions for their cooperatives are, probably. But I believe Ngamwasanga problem, ile chitika, na mchita identify problem. Then you come together, forming a group. This is what we want to challenge, or this to fix as at that level, at community level. To me, I feel that would be a best solution or suggestion.
Yeah, because that would be really good, because then you have people, like-minded people, coming together to focus on a problem. So you just don't willy-nilly forming a cooperative because that one is my friend, that one is... No, you're forming a cooperative because you've identified a particular problem, or a supply product or product missing or whatever. You could then come together and start thinking, who has these skills? Who has that skills? Who has that skills? Then you come and form a cohesive grouping. Then that grouping could be able now to apply for CDF funding. I think that would be much more powerful, much more better, and probably you are guaranteed to get better results than where people get the money first and then start looking for a problem. That could be, I think in a difficult in a way.
I have a question for you, my brother. For both of you.
Go ahead, Mukeleba.
Yes. In Zambia, we have been beaten so many times. We are now scared. I believe even the current government is scared when it comes to handling money. The government, the people's money. They are cautious because there's too much corruption. With this with this background, how do we trust even the very people that are in charge or that are so pretending on our CDF, the monies that are being dished out to or given to our community? How do we trust, especially when we look at our history? Our previous officers or people that we authorized, that we gave power to, look at what they did with our money. Today, they instead of going to church, they are ever in court, going to defend themselves, exculpate themselves over the usage of public funds. Corruption, it's a very, very deadly cancer. Once it enters the country, it's difficult. These guys also, should we exonerate these guys, exempt them from being prone to be corrupt? Should corruption just be is corruption just money, or there's a lot to do with corruption? So how do we trust? What mechanism should we employ to trust these guys who are handling our public funds and authorities? Thank you.
Mr. Bimbe, do you want me to come first and then you go after it? Mukeleba, here we're talking about CDF, but I'll talk about corruption in general. From my accounting background, yeah, Mukeleba, what causes corruption is lack of systems. I would give an example. One ministry that has had a lot of corruption, I'm not saying in the current government, in the previous government and in governments before, if there is one ministry where a permanent secretary director has been jailed, that's the Ministry of Health. So what might have caused that corruption in Ministry of Health? From my accounting experience, it might be because the systems, the processes, the procedures are not stringent. Because corruption only comes when systems are weak. The processes are not stringent. The processes, the procedures are not stringent. And then also, is the whole system digital? Because digitization of all systems results into efficiency and can also help into reducing corruption. So deliberately, in some government ministries, they don't want to fix those loopholes. Those processes, procedures, and controls, they are loopholes. They don't want to seal them. If they digitize Ministry of Health, the corruption will reduce. It will improve efficiency. So you tell me somebody is going to try to improve that a process or processes. So the only way, and then the other thing is, you cannot reduce corruption to 0%. There's always corruption all over the world. But the only way we can reduce corruption is to have proper processes, controls, procedures, and controls in place, stringent controls. And one of that has to be the systems have to be digitized. Because once the systems are digitized, even if people try to steal and controls are there, they will be caught because they will leave, what word, Mr. Bimbe, can I give? Digital systems leaves a trail.
Trail.
So there is a trail. So even if you brought forensic auditors, it will be easy to find the culprits. But once the systems, I would give you an example. If medication are stolen in Ministry of Health, how are you going to catch them? There are no systems. Prescriptions are issued by hand. If the prescriptions were issued digitally, but via an email, it's easy to trace who got the medication at what time. All those things. So one of the biggest problem to corruption and inefficiency is because there are no proper systems, there are no proper processes, there are no proper controls. And I believe Akainde Ichilema is a businessman, and I think he's looking into that. But if we don't sort out those loopholes in Ministry of Health, we'll never stop corruption. So that's the only thing I can say. Mr. Bimbe, what's your point? What's your take on that?
Thank you.
So before Mr. Bimbe comes in, CDF, I think there will be less corruption because the processes and procedures are very, very good.
And
Maybe
if it's
maybe the implementation.
maybe, to borrow your word, if it's digitalized as well.
Yes, and yeah, if the processes are digitalized, such that if somebody is applying for CDF, instead of completing forms, they just go on a like Mr. Bimbe said, center of excellency, and then one point where all the information about CDF is kept online. So if somebody wants to apply for CDF, it's just a small template on the computer. Go there, type the information, everything, enter everything, their details, everything, their national registration card details, and PIN, what do you call TPN. So once that is captured and authorized electronically, electronic signatures, everything, that will reduce corruption. But the reason why there's so much corruption is because systems are not digitized, one, and then two, the processes, controls, and they are very weak. And human being doesn't want. The question one thing I would tell you, Mukelebai, I will not mention the names. There are certain countries where war does not stop. Civil war after the other, civil war after the other. Those countries are rich in minerals. Why do you think the war doesn't stop? Because if there is peace, then everybody will enjoy the resources of the country. But if there is war, only the powerful will enjoy. So are you trying to get my point? So people deliberately cause those civil wars or fights so that there is confusion. And in the middle of that confusion, the powerful are rooting the resources. That's how corruption works. They leave the system so weak, so vulnerable, so that they can continue rooting. Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you've explained it very well. Yeah, you need to have proper processes and controls, and of course, digital can play a big role in terms of capturing that information, which we've alluded to as creating that center of excellence. But one of the biggest thing that also needed is transparency. Without transparency, you cannot really fight corruption. So, for example, within the procurement system, saying within CDF, if we take an example, if you publish all the applications that you got publicly without removing anything, maybe just probably some other, security type of data, identifying individual or whatever. But if they are a company or the individual, you could publish that without their NRS. You publish everything. Who applied, who won the funding. It's publicly there. And people can read what they said they would do. And from there, I think people would be able to follow through.
And
say,
also people can take them to account.
Just a moment. So people could follow through that. But what we are lacking mostly, I think in Zambia, is about the transparency isn't there. We don't publish a lot of these things. All you hear is just an announcement. There's this and this money. We've built this thing. But you look for the details. There is very, very scant details. You don't know who bid, under what conditions, and who won. You keep track of that. In most countries, you have that information online. You can just go there and say, who won, what were the contracts. Oh, these are the bids that were issued. These are the people that applied for those bids, and these are the people that won. These are the reason why this one didn't win. So it's transparent. Everyone knows. But what we get is this hiding of things. Can you imagine if you do that? Even the overcharging could stop, because people would say, why did you buy that when it's that? So that's another way, other than on top of what Patrick has just illustrated, in terms of having proper systems and controls, and probably using a lot of digital tools so that information is kept properly, is secure. And also, you can always go back. Whenever there's a digital, you always leave those digital fingerprints around. So while we improve efficiencies, we are open, but at the same time, we are also reducing that opportunities for corruption.
Mr. Bimbe, that was powerful. Indeed, CDF is a game changer. And Mr. Bimbe, imagine the kind of legacy HH would leave, and his government, the new Dawn government, will leave if this CDF succeeds. Don't you think this CDF can be used as a blueprint? Don't you think, despite having challenges, this CDF can be a huge opportunity for Zambia and Zambians? Imagine if it succeeds, which means other countries can use CDF as a blueprint from Zambia. And then imagine the donor community, how many other projects that can be replicated and used similar to CDF that the donor funders can do. What is your say about that in terms of replicating that CDF even beyond our borders? Imagine if a European country comes and uses, because we've got that data now, empirical data, somewhere at University of Zambia Center of Excellence. And imagine how proud a Zambian like me would be to hear that a European country has used the Zambian model of CDF to do something else. Or another African country have used the Zambian model of CDF for the benefit of their people. Over to you.
Yeah, certainly. That's a very good thought, actually. If we were to do it properly, as we are saying, and then have this central place or center of excellency, which can, analyze, collect the learning, document what goes on, and what we've already said in terms of just managing the workflows within the bidding, the applications, and the dissipation, the monitoring, all that data is collected. We are able to see transparently. I think that can be powerful, and I think as a model, it can work in different places. And I mean, Zambia is not the first one to try CDF. Of course, there are other countries that have tried it. But if we make it work and be able to document what we've learned and be able to apply, then we can continue streamlining these whole processes and probably bring in other things. Can you imagine also going forward? There will be now this extra innovation that might come. We've delivered the desks. Then the next thing is, we need modern desks, modern design, that can go in a classroom. We know now students, take phones, having charging slots and all that kind of thing.
We don't need the boards to use chalk. Now we want those proper boards.
Yeah.
With projectors.
So I believe, taken properly. I mean, this is just the beginning. We've got another 3 years of CDF, and God willing, it continues into the next parliament. That could be really, really, really powerful.
And who knows? The donors can say we're gonna fund it. Make it bigger.
So
if it works.
Yeah. So you can think of it as we use more and more and more, because right now we are just fixing these immediate issues. Once we fix these problems, each classroom, each school maybe have desks and whatever. What next?
It will now about bigger things.
Innovations now. How can I build a better desk for the modern school? How can I build a better classroom? Because the teaching methods are changing nowadays. Teachers are more facilitators than standing in front. So how do you design those? Because currently we are just rushing to build because we lack capacity. We don't have the necessary capacity. You remember the president mentioned when the opposition were crying that this free education, it has caused a lot of problems because there are less spaces. And the president said, well, it's a good problem to have, rather than children not going to school. However, we're going to double up on providing that those spaces, and that's what CDF is doing. Or what I'm saying is, going forward, once we've exhausted that, we've solved some of this problem, I think our youth, our entrepreneurs will start becoming more innovative to create really unique solutions to some of these problems as we go forward. So to me, it is really a game changer, but we just need to learn, make it better, so to speak. That's what we need. We are just at the cusp of that. So we just need to ramp up and start formalizing things, start really creating a proper, knowledge curation mechanism, learning from each other, collecting data, a lot of data of what's going on and whatever. Because right now, I don't think anybody will know, if I was to ask a question, how many desks were delivered across all the constituencies. I don't think anybody has got that data right now. So it's those kind of things that it can help even in planning going forward. And we could also be, comparing, looking at student ratios and all that kind of thing. There are people that just love to work with data. They can do that once it's all available and start asking, more credible questions, which goes to even improve those processes better.
So in essence, what you are saying is we learn lessons out of CDF. We capture that data. And now we know what is good and what is bad. We pick what is good. So that data, empirical data, can be used going forward for planning, for policy formulation. So which means now the government can even find a better way of funding CDF, and even which areas need more funding. So instead of giving the same amount, they can now give certain areas slightly more money, though though the standard amount is the same, but slightly more money for other areas? Is that what you mean?
That could be, yeah, that could be another aspect, because once you are more transparent with this thing and everything is really auditable properly and is there, we can see the progress, you can see the insight of what is happening, what's going on through this, what we've already talked about, data and whatever. That could be, yeah, that could be something that could be used as a model, because right now we've already learned something, the challenges that people were having, because the forms were very difficult to complete. Those are challenges. That's what the learning is all about. But do we capture that learning? What solutions did we create to alleviate, to mitigate those problems? Or we just sent people away and say, well, hard luck. That's the way we improve our processes. We need to identify, as we do things, we are learning. That's what I was saying. It's really a big laboratory, 156 labs that we have, trying to solve, use a similar method of funding to solve their local problem. That's a very good, experiment, where you can pick data from different sources without really taking that long to understand what really works, what doesn't work. But we just need to come up with a way of achieving that. And that's why we're saying, would the CDF Center of Excellence be able to do those kind of things?
So in essence, what you're saying is we come up with a standardized method or way of managing and distributing CDF, so that everybody is using a similar, similar way of managing and distributing CDI. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Currently, everybody is doing the same thing, right? Or everybody is doing different things. But as we learn, we can see, oh, that method really is better. If we take that method is better in this area, we combine, we remove those bad elements. That's how we improve things. So I foresee such a situation where these things improved, whereby maybe in the future, you could just have a very simple form to do that. And to just, for applying that. And if these systems are also linked up to other places, identity at the home, the Ministry of Home Affairs for registrations and tax and all that could just improve that throughput, that kind of efficiency, but also provide the transparency that is needed. So currently there isn't. All we can see is just pictures. Oh, there's a Land Cruiser there, CDF monitoring. But what are they monitoring? Where is the data? What is it that they're monitoring? It's good. They can drive around and see what projects, but nobody's reporting back to you and me, or to everyone. Maybe they do. We just don't see that data. But I would love that kind of data to be publicly available, because you can, deal with the critics as well if you have that information readily available. People can see those stories of change come to life, and you can pinpoint this is what has happened.
That's powerful. Any comments, any questions so far?
Well, me, I really have much hope that as this government is still teething, we are going to see some kind of wisdom teeth that will come very soon, and we're going to have a better country tomorrow. But I still have a problem with our local government, the Ministry of Local Government, with their past records. Their track record hasn't been perfect. The only time I remember the ministry was perfect was during, I think it was during MMD, when Michael Sata was one of the Minister of Local Government, when he really shook the whole ministry, where we saw a lot of buildings, infrastructures being erected, and we saw a colossal sum of money being realized from people that were busy, uh, uh, abusing, or rather littering the country, especially in Lusaka. And from that end, nothing has transpired, nothing has happened. We have seen the local government, the local authorities, for example, most of the local authority in Zambia, their performance was below par. They were not doing their jobs. They were just busy asking for their monies, their salaries. But when it comes to delivery of service, there was nothing that was going on. We could not even see any initiative, not even the local authority coming up with their own buses, transportation to revamp their activities, nothing of that kind. Today, we are now entrusting them with the Community Development Fund, and they're the ones in charge. Now, my worry is with these track records, Wagari Nkombo, that you've inherited, how are you going to make people trust you again as a local authority? Because we have seen nothing so far that the local authorities and under the umbrella of our local government has done nothing in terms of mitigating the challenges that our local people at the ward level, at the village level, down have been. We saw many buildings closed down. We saw many blockages, water drainage systems. Everything was just not. The whole things was just not working. That is in urban areas. When it comes to rural areas, villages, kuja, there's nothing that was working. That's why you find even teachers, they are sent in villages. What happens? They go and start doing chimpapira, and they can't work because there hasn't been any system, any initiative from anybody, from the authority. All the ministries were just numb. But now we have Ministry of Local Government that is now in charge of the CDF. How do we trust you? How do we trust them? What innovative programs are they going to put in place that will challenge what they failed to do, that will challenge their records, their previous record? The working culture is pathetic. We have qualified people that were just sitting in their offices doing absolutely nothing, just getting paid for free, pro bono. So my worry is Gary Nkombo's ministry, and that goes to all the ministries. What mechanism are you going to put in place that will show the Zambian people that now the working culture in our ministries, especially our CDF ministry, the local government authority over our CDF, what mechanism, what programs are they going to put, or innovative programs that are going to be put in place, and how do we trust them? Because we want to see results. We want to see them challenging their terrible performance. I don't even know why we still have those people in offices when we have a chain of well-qualified university graduates, youths that are just roaming the street. Put those chaps that have been given position that were there for a long time on notice, because they have not done anything. They could not even produce or innovate a needle, even toothpicks. Why should we keep such people? Put them on notice, let them retire, bring in the new brains, the new staff to carry on, because
we don't have time to start sitting down and going back to the retirees and correct the mistakes. We'll never see our local authorities developing, and our CDF will go back in the same ditch to be corruption again all over, because the money is going to be stolen again. But we have hope because we have political will. We have leadership that is very geared to work with the people and deliver. So let's not disappoint this individual. Let's put his dream forward. Tatulefuati bakule emitwe ama ministers nabantu babo ma ministries. Don't be big-headed. Communicate to the people what you are doing. Let us have data with everyone so that we see. It's easy for even people that lives in the diaspora to just click and see how many desks, like what Bimbe has put, how many cars have you purchased using CDF? What have you done in each? So we want to see those things. That is the only part I wanted to run to say the working culture must be improved. Those who are not performing, please let them leave. Because twalikwata abana besu balefa okwingira enchito. And they are well qualified and they are well knowledgeable. And of course, they have technology on their fingertips. Not total.
Thank you, Mkelevai. Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
So, yeah, what was the question? Okay, anyway.
No, the question, my brother, there was not a question in that. What I was trying to say was the ministry.
Okay, all right.
MQuai, the Ministry of Local Government that is now in charge of distributing the CDF or in charge of a CDF, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They have done nothing. They have a terrible track record. So why should we trust? Why should we have faith in them? Why do we have to hope that they are going to do the right work when they have a terrible history, terrible track record? They have done nothing.
So you're saying the previous regime, not the current government, isn't
Well, these were civil servants. I'm talking about civil servants because politician comes and goes.
Yeah.
And you find those guys who are in offices who have been work in the local government and in the local authority, kuma council kulia. They are the same chaps that have been there, except mayors and these political appointees. Those one we can put them aside because those have a lifespan. But we have these others that have quite a long lifespan, that are employed by the Zambian people, that are paid, that are pensionable. They have been there. They've done nothing. And we can tell from even other ministries, like the Ministry of Education, those teachers who were busy sitting for 2 years, that is not a political appointee. Those teachers are not politically appointed. Those are civil servants. Who supervise them? That's the same kind of attitude that we're going to find even in these ministries, especially the Ministry of Local Government. The syndicate is everywhere. That laziness, the I don't care type of attitude, it is everywhere. It is on every civil servant's forehead. There are very few who mean well. So I think, so my concern was, how do we trust these chaps? What is it they can do to bring back that trust so that we can be relaxed and be safe to say our money is in safe hands? Can these people even talk about digitalizing when they're in a village drinking cachasu?
Thank you so much, Mkelevai.
Yeah.
Mr. Bimbe, do you want to say something, or should we look at?
Yeah, I can say something. I mean,
okay,
yeah,
over to you.
It's a good observation, Mkelevai, and we all wish, we all hope that things will change. One thing that we can say, we can hope is, I mean, look at cadarism, or so-called cadarism, the way it just, look at the behavior of the police today when they are administering, when they discuss in meeting the citizens. So that required what? Leadership. They're the same people. It's just leadership. So I still want to believe that the civil servants that they are there now, you know, they will be guided in a proper way with a proper system, a very responsive system that they can manage. Sometimes you would want to agree with me that maybe most civil servants were actually demoralized, probably, in the last government. They would go without salaries for long. You know, there was micromanagement in some places. You know, they couldn't do anything. The ministers, the cadres were running the show. So they were just there, well, I'll just wait until I get my pension. So there wasn't that stimulation to do well. They were not really excited about even going to work, I believe. But now, I think with this change of leadership, I think we need to start believing in the systems. If we can put the system rather than believing in individuals, then we stand a better chance of leaving a legacy. We are coming from a situation where the abnormal became normal. So to correct that is behavior change, which takes long because the behaviors change have changed to you know, to do things in a different way. That's why people today can still complain that we want to eat now, we want this, you know. So to change that mindset, it's gonna take long. But I believe with proper system, transparency in whatever we are doing, believing in systems that cannot be compromised. Of course, there could be compromised here, but then the majority will follow through. Excite the civil servant, give them things, good delegation, don't micromanage them. You know, they're experts in those areas. Most of them are very, very highly qualified, but they were not given a chance. So I believe that can change. Of course, there will be some elements that are pretty bad. They cannot change. That brings in, you know, how do we measure productivity, for example? If we can define those things, it will be much easier to deal with such kind of people. Because willy-nilly just firing because of a name or whatever is just, to me, it's just wrong. But in any working environment, work areas, there is an issue of how do you measure productivity. It could be they're just not skilled. It could be they're just, unteachable, or it could be just they are having blockages here and there. So yeah, we need to work through that. And the unfortunate thing, as Mkeleva, you have said, we'll still be with these people. So how do we change that behavior? I think being transparent, giving them respect, is going to work. Because at the end of the day, if you antagonize the civil service, they can put problems on service delivery. You need to work with them. So as government, they really need to work with them, incentivize them, allow them the latitude to formulate solutions to problems. Let them be innovative. Don't just put them, because our culture is also a funny one where, you have a minister today, ministers, this is a question that I saw on one clip where, politicians look after a lot of people, yet the barrier to entry is so low for politicians, right? Now, because of also we tend to make politicians look, like our bosses, and then they start managing things, taking over from the civil servants, once we need to start understanding that politicians, some of them have never worked before organization. Some of them don't have the necessary skills that are required. Some of them will never survive in an open labor market. We need to know that. We can understand that. But those are the same politicians that can frustrate a qualified somebody who's been, to school, they've got experience with various organizations. They can frustrate that because they think they know better. So we need also to put our politicians in their place. That their role is not to be technical. They are not technical people. They are just policy people.
They are overseers.
Overseers. They are just the connection.
They are bishops. They are bishops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
their role is to make sure that the UPND manifesto is implemented. So they have to marry the manifesto and the policies. Who implement the policies? The civil servants. So I think also the politicians, they need to know their role.
Yeah, they need to know where the
boundary is.
Yeah. So I don't think, to me, if someone becomes a minister today, I don't think they are that clever, really. They're not that smart. Because you can go and shout, convince a few people they vote for you. That doesn't make you whatever. Well, there will be some who are smart, of course, but the majority will not be in that. That's why we keep saying in Africa, why do we have problems? It's because politics as a profession has become a profession. It's one of those professions, rather, I'm going to put in contention because it's become a profession in most African countries. It's got the lowest barrier to entry. Look in Zambia, it's only grade 12 certificate, isn't it? So,
yeah, but then if you want a permanent secretary, it needs to be more educated than grade 12.
Exactly.
And now you've got a minister micromanaging a permanent secretary.
That's where the frustration is within the civil service. That's where the problem comes from.
That's a fantastic point. And then coming to my point, Mr. Bimbe, you mentioned about somebody asked a question. Like when you look at the HH wants to put structures in place, strong foundation, systems in place, the judiciary working independently from the government, from legislative. And you also mentioned processes, structures. So, and you mentioned we need a very strong civil service because politicians can come in and go. Somebody asked a question, Mr. Bimbe. Imagine America was like most African countries where the systems are weak, there's no separation of power between the presidency and the legislature and the parliament. Imagine if Donald Trump was a president of one of the African countries. What was going to happen? Over to you, Mr. Bimbe.
Well, yes, that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
We need.
Don't you think he was going to change everything, go to parliament, change the laws?
Well, he could have been still president.
And he would have become a life president.
So that's why we need to quote what President Obama said at the AU one time. He said, Africa does not need strong man. It needs strong institutions. So that, to me, is quite powerful. So
strong institutions.
So you don't, because what we have in Africa, within our political dispensation, is we always wait to get a better president.
No.
If we get a bad one, then chaos ensues because the institutions are so weak. If you get a good one, things work smoothly. So this is where, if we can strengthen those, How, I don't know, but that's subject to debate. There are countries that have done that. We might need to look to those and see. Gradually, we can actually create that environment that we all crave for, where, you know, everyone is accountable.
Don't you think constitutional reforms can do that? One example of a country that has got, though there is corruption, that has got very strong institutions is South Africa, and their constitution is very, very powerful, translated even in local languages. And there are no by-elections in South Africa, and then they can easily recall the president if he's not performing. So don't you think constitutional reforms can be one of the ways of strengthening institutions?
Yes, I think we need to probably to go backwards and think, do we really need this combined approach of a British system of governance and an American system of governance, which we have currently? So what I mean there is, if you look at the British system, is you've got a prime minister who is actually a member of parliament. So the party that gets the biggest seats, selects the prime minister. And the prime minister, by virtue of being an MP, sits in parliament. That's why every Wednesday they go and debate. They are accountable that way. You go to the American system, you have a situation where if you are elected in one of the houses, you can never be in the executive. So the president selects his executive from outside parliament. So because of that separation, there's no way that your legislature becomes a rubber stamp, because there's no incentive. If you have a system like the British one, which we have adopted in Zambia, if you're an MP from a ruling party, you're not going to be antagonistic all the time, because you're eyeing for a position as a minister. So you might end up having a parliament that becomes just a rubber stamp. And then the other thing is, because we split the president, the president directly elected, once we elect them, we are stuck with them for 5 years. They are not accountable to anyone at that point, because where the accountability mechanism inbuilt in there, there's nothing.
That we can impeach them.
We can't. How? Because the parliament is got members of parliament to belong to that. But do you think they can impeach the president?
Yeah. So you go back to the same numbers again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
You've got that. We've got that dilemma which we created. So maybe we can relook at that connection, which you alluded to with South Africa, because they took the kind of Americans, the British system, in a way where the party with more majority seats then elects the president, and then the president within that party, if the problem, they can recall that president. We don't have that mechanism, which is very difficult. We cannot do it. So essentially what we have is, once we elect the president, we are stuck with that president, whether good or bad, for 5 years, unless God forbid they leave us or they resign, which is never the case. So yes, I'm hoping that constitutional reform will look into that as well, just to create that bit separation. And also, if you have that kind of good separation, where then the president can also be accorded with quite a larger pool of talent to choose from to become ministers, to be in the executive,
or permanent secretaries, become
because
director generals and employed from the private sector or
Yeah.
anywhere.
So because now, as we have said earlier, you've got a low barrier to entry into parliament. For example, in Zambia, it's a grade 12. So you got to select ministers from there anyway, because that's what the constitution says. But if we separate that, then the president can have that latitude, a larger pool, because now if you're an MP, you're just an MP. That's it. All your job is to do that. But also when probably the president selects some people, then they go to parliament for interviews. I mean, I think in Kenya now that is even it's been done as well, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So we could look to that. And then there is also an issue of security of tenure within some of the heads of institutions. That can create also problems when people are so scared of, when the new government comes in, my job is gone. So they'll pander to whoever is in power. And then you have a president that is not accountable to anyone, as it is in Zambia currently. Then you have a problem if you have a bad president.
Okay, that's fantastic. But I think we've got a good president now. And what we need is strong institutions now. And I think HH has been trying to do that in the last 16 months or so. Let's look at some of the questions or comments on from the viewers. It's one of our regular guys from he's saying CDF should have a general template to make up applying for CDF easy. What do you think about that, Mr. Bimbe?
In my earlier talk, actually, when I was discussing this idea of CDF Center of Excellence, that could be one of their roles, to create those kind of simplified guidelines, or rather guidelines and templates. Because once the data starts being collected, it has to be similar, for measuring. So yeah, I do agree we need a template. But again, we need to know what really works for us to design, for the government probably to redesign the templates that they use for applications. So yes,
and that can be done through questionnaires, sending random questionnaires, and then people respond to them.
Now how I'm sure they know if they can go back to people that applied and ask them questions, which bits they found difficult to answering or whatever. They could do all sorts of things, of focus groups. They could rejig that form and create a simplified template that could be used. But we need to learn first to understand what really the bottlenecks were.
The same Davis is saying we need proper monitoring and evaluation systems for evaluation systems. That's for CDF.
And Bimbe, just to add on your point, also we should also observe, we should also realize that we are in a country that has a quite number of a population that is not enlightened in terms of education-wise. So as they're just maybe 30% of people in Zambia, the majority who are working class and educated. The rest, the population is not that, but they are Zambians, and they need to know, they need to learn how to access the CDF. And that's why you find it's quite challenging. It's only for those that are enlightened that are able to access CDF. And as for an ordinary Zambian who failed to pay for their education at a time when education was expensive, they are sidelined. So the question is, how do you encompass everyone? How do we put everyone on board so that they can access they can access CDF so easily?
Yeah.
That's what I just wanted to add on that part.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, it's something that I overlooked. I think, yeah, support for those that don't understand English, because English is the mode. I also want to probably to take you like in Rwanda. They currently have 3 main languages, basically: Kinyarwanda, French, and English. They might join in Swahili. So all their official documentation, even forms, are translated into those 3 languages. So it's very easy. So maybe, I mean, Zambia having a lot of them, but we still go along with what was created in the UNIP era. I think there are 7 official, recognized as official, that have broadcasting slots on ZNBC. So we could maybe translate those forms, and it's just a good idea to start translating most of this information immediately we create it, so that accessibility is much easier. We broaden that accessibility for people with different abilities. Another way would be the councils. They've got currently, I mean, I don't know how libraries are, the councils. I don't know. Maybe they could have people there that drop-in centers that they could create to help those folk that need a particular skill, even in digital. I think that would work. Or schools could double up on that to provide that kind of support to those people that were difficult. It will be difficult, but I think there are solutions. If people can think hard about that, we can bring everybody into the fold.
Okay, that's fantastic. I've got this question, but don't look at the last part. Says directly from CDF. It says, can we provide practical suggestions on how best, this is what we've been talking about, CDF could be implemented than just giving theories. Can you answer that question, Bimbe, please?
Well, this is the dilemma, isn't it? It's a kind of chicken and eggs problem here we have now. So how do I provide solutions when I don't have the data? I don't know what's going on. That's why
I gave you that question.
That's why we are suggesting that if we can have this center that can collect this learning, collect that information, then we can learn and devise interventions or mitigation to fix where things are broken. So it's not theories per se what we are saying. We cannot suggest something that we haven't seen. There's no official data anywhere. So it will be very hard to put that suggestion. That's why our first point of call is, can we have that data publicly available? See what works, see what doesn't work. We can work out that, and then from there we can be able to decide how to improve it. So, for example, we've talked about people having difficulties completing those forms, but we don't know which areas they are failing to complete those forms on. We have no clue. We don't know. There's no data that has been collected to identify where the
or the reasons why. Maybe they don't understand English.
Exactly. So we don't know. We are just speculating. So to kind of come up with a solution is hard, isn't it? So that's my answer to that question.
So far, just to add on, so far CDF has been distributed into all these constituencies. And the practical example we can give you, my brother, was it a brother or sister, is through the CDF of Can CDF. We can use the gentleman, the MP, together with his supporting staff as an example that we can emulate or ask to say, so far after the increment, because CDF has been there, we know all that.
but it hasn't been implemented. The way it has been implemented was quite politicized so much that only those people who belong to the ruling party at the time benefited, and those that did not support, or the MP does that belong to an opposition, will only receive that 1.6 after maybe after two to 3 years. So we know what has been going. We know the challenges, and today we have a new dawn government that has decided to uniform and distribute this money, even though we are facing few challenges. That is where we are making these assumptions. I mean, not assumptions, but suggestions that the government should look into and work on, improve on transparency, and also digitalize the system, so that at least people will be able to follow. And of course, dissemination of information, sharing of the information of how or what are the challenges and the pros and cons of this CDF. We learn through that. But for now, the practical example is that so far we see the desks that have been distributed, even though we don't have proper follow-ups, proper data based on that. We see the Kanchivie MP doing well with his project. We don't have also proper data, but those are kind of the little bit practical examples we can give so far. But many have received, even though they also receive not the amount in full, but they receive money installments. So we don't know why it is that, but and they are paid maybe at the end of the year. But since we know that this has been increased just recently, probably that they are working on to that, and we may know. But you can also do your own research, go on the ground and find out. Go to the government offices and ask questions, because you are entitled to be given information on community development funds too. That's what I can only say to our brother.
Thank you, Mukelebai. Mr. Bimbe, you mentioned something very important. Imagine, we're not very good at recording data or keeping data or researching. CDF has been there since 1995. We're talking of almost 30 years now. And so far, we could only found 2 journals at the Jesuits, JTCR repository, you know. So, you know, we were expecting to have so many journals and research about CDF. And by this time, we could have been doing it. We could have been doing very, very well. So, what should be done going forward? It's never too late.
Yeah.
So,
So
So the fact that the Catholics have already
well,
they've got 2 journals or already there. Why can't we work with the Catholics? And maybe the Center of Excellence sits at JCTR, and then work together and continue from where they've started.
it's I mean it is an interesting question. Yes, we need to start from somewhere. We need to start just learning what we do. What I said earlier, we are very, very poor at understanding, through really quality research to come up with idea. Or what we get is the emotional outbursts that come through the social media, because people are using emotions rather than coming down with real data. That's what we thrive on, those kind of things. So I would like to see, I mean, there are people that have talked about that, something, being gathered properly, well researched, well discussed, and then use that as a basis to understand what's going on. Because once we go through this idea of just outburst, people just say, well, CDF is crap because I failed to get it. I mean, how do you then improve it if there are no specifics? And we need to find those specifics. And the only way we can do that is through formalized data collection. That we can use. At least we stand a better chance of saying, whatever we thought through, whatever we are trying to do as a policy is actually based on this understanding.
And empirical data.
This populist type of decision making or policy making that can create havoc. Look at the dead mountain that was left behind because of the populist way of looking at things. So of course there were other motives maybe to line up some people's pockets, but obviously a lot of it was a perception. If we show them these white elephants, people are going to say we are working. But then go to those white elephants. Are they really economical? Do they make sense? Did they have a good business case?
You go and spend 368 million on a white elephant airport.
So yeah, you create that.
There's no traffic.
New terminal. It's nice, whatever, but
beautiful.
How are you going to pay for it? They're projecting 2 million, I think, passengers going through. Do you think was those projection realistic? Probably we could have grown slowly. Sometimes, well, there is where you say, build it, they will come mantra. It works for some products, for certain things, but for some, really, where cash is in short supply and you're relying on debt, you need to be prudent, probably. So those are the kind of things that collecting data, writing about it, in a better way, it informs that, so that as we debate, as we discuss these things, we are all coming from an informed position rather than just emotional outburst, which currently is the case in mostly in Zambia.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Bimbe. The government does not have enough resources. So all we do is to utilize those scarce resources efficiently and effectively. Instead of going and spend $368 million, they could have refurbished the airport and channel that money where it was mostly needed. Poverty eradication, some important roads. To me, honestly, if I was in government, I would have spent that 368 million to do the Ndola Lusaka road, which is a very important road, which is also a death trap at the moment. But you never know the motive, about the previous government, but I don't think that date was properly utilized. That's my opinion. We're now coming towards the end of the program. Mkelevai, 2 minutes closing remarks before Bimbe also 2 minutes closing remarks. Over to you, Mkelevai.
Ritumezi vo Chilufya Kihande, ritumezi Mambumbu Yambai kwa kutwa. I would just say that thank you, PF, and for having taught us a lesson. Some of us, we never even intended to join either politics or to be involved more fikansa. But because of the way you administered, the way you were running the country, we felt compelled to join in and have a say. So today, most every Zambian has freedom to express themselves over the way and the manner in which our government are governing our people. So we want to thank you. Of course, we cannot thank you for messing up the nation, but we can only thank you for opening our eyes and for teaching us a lesson that we have to be very careful in how we handle matters way forward. Otherwise, just want to thank the current government, hopefully that they are going to stay on course, that they are not just also giving us elephant tasks or crocodile teeth or tears, I don't know what you call it, ivory, mquai, that then tomorrow we see them changing and going back to the old ways that the previous regime did. So we just want to thank them for having done whatever they've done so far. And we know the journey, it's still long, but we just want to thank them for having increased the CDF, which our people should access easily, not putting much obstacles for them to access them. We want them to translate the information how to access CDF into local languages. That one is very, very important because we know there are many people out there who are educated, but the CDF is not for the literate, even for the illiterate. Zambia is for us all. So we need to be inclusive and be transparent tulefa okumona ifirechitika, not ukutufishila and today on figures, but we don't know what you have done with the money or where the money has gone. We want to know, we are entitled, it is our money as society, as the public. We want to know what is going on. You are not entitled to keep information to yourselves alone when you work for the people. We need the information of what is going on in every government institution. And last, what I can only ask is the public, the Zambian people, be on guard. Civil servants, government officials, politicians that you see are violating the taking advantage of the system, please take note, utilize those gadgets, cell phones, bring them online. You cannot be sued when it is true. It cannot be defamation when it is true. But you can only be sued if it is not true, you are just fabricating. That's when you can be in trouble. But if it is something that you have seen and it is true, like what we saw, those teachers were Chipapira, those two teachers, that is what we need to do. Let's utilize this technology that is available on our fingertips to challenge some of these unfair devices.
Thank you so much, Bom Kelevai. Mr. Bimbe, over to you. Your closing remarks. Thank you.
I'll be short. I think this discussion has been interesting. It's brought out some of those thoughts that I had. I think the only way you can improve a process or a system is to understand that process. The only way you can understand that process is to have information. So to me, it just goes to say that the more we understand, the more we have, proper formalized data about the CDF delivery as a mechanism for delivery, but also the projects that comes out of it, the better equipped we will be to find ways of improving it. That's one thing. Because we believe, I personally believe, it's a good proven way of encouraging local participation in development. So far, we've seen that the speed at which some of those projects took off, classroom being built, desks being manufactured and delivered, within a short period of time. So again, if we are clever, we are smart enough, we're innovative enough, we kind of create an environment that is going to, to dampen this urban pool. Today we are struggling with street vending and sprawling shanty compounds. Why is that? It's because of urbanization. It's the migration from the rural to the urban, because that's where opportunities lie. Now, if you were to move a lot of this with the CDF into those areas, I'm sure a lot of people would rather stay there. And that reduces that pool as well. Again, doing it properly, it also gives us a guide, as Zambia is aiming to become a middle-income country by 2030, as exposed in the 8th National Development Plan. So this kind of data collection and everything that we learn from it could actually be able to help us navigate whether we are going to that level, as well as just meeting those United Nations strategic development goals, sustainable development goals. So it is, to me, it's a bigger thing, and I want to believe that with goodwill, as it has shown. I mean, we all know CDF has been there since 2015, I think, but
1995.
1995, yeah. But it's been quiet. We never saw any tangible outcomes from it, other than just fighting about it. Oh, the man has been released now, but nothing was coming up. But today, we are able to safely, gladly say, yes, as Omkeleva has said, there are practical examples out there that has happened. So, all in all, I think it's something that local government needs to think through, and hopefully they can take some of these suggestions. I don't know how, but yeah, it will be interesting to see where we can take it as a resource distribution model.
That's powerful. Mr. Bimbe, thank you so much for joining in, being a guest, and Mr. Mukeleva being a co-guest. Thank you so much for your contribution. And to our viewers, thank you so much wherever you're watching us all over the world for your viewership. And may the good Lord bless our beloved mother Zambia. Bye for now and good night.